Member Saanich North and the Islands.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. The migration of steelhead trout from inland BC to ocean waters and back represents one of the wonders of the world. Yet the genetically distinct Chilcotin and Thompson River populations are at grave risk of going extinct, plummeting in numbers by 80% over the past 15 years. Last year, the scientific body that assesses species at risk, COSIWIC, took the unusual step of issuing an emergency recommendation to list these populations as endangered. Federal and provincial ministers agreed that they are under imminent threat. Yet the populations were not listed under SARA, the species at risk legislation, federal species at risk legislation. And of course, as BC doesn't have an endangered species law, they were not listed here in BC either. Instead, the province and DFO, Department of Fisheries and Oceans, responded to this ecological crisis with an opaque, non-binding, and widely panned joint, quote, action plan, end quote. Through you, Honourable Speaker, my question is to the Minister of Forest, Lands, Natural Resource Operations and Rural Development. Last year, in question period, when I asked about the drastic decline in steelhead, he said, quote, the commercial bycatch in the Fraser is of utmost concern to us, end quote. Why then does the Steelhead Action Plan, quote, the product of significant and sustained collaboration, end quote, between the two levels of government, center around continued commercial and gill net fishing on the Fraser River?
Minister of Forests, Lands, Natural Resources and Rural Development.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker, and thank you to the member for the question. Our government takes the decline in steelhead stocks very seriously, and we're committed to supporting steelhead conservation. It does concern us what the member stated, that obviously not enough was done in the last decade and a half, and now we're at critical levels. We have worked on the Steelhead Action Plan with the federal government, and in that plan, we agreed to take joint measures, especially measures that under provincial jurisdiction around habitat management, around watershed management, around recreational fishery management. We are concerned over DFO salmon harvesting allocations, Honourable Speaker. Staff estimate that the federal decision increases the protection measures for interior Fraser steelhead from a 27-day closure to a 40-day closure, and that will only protect 60 to 75% of the species. BC recommended 60 to 75 days for protection. I have met most recently in June with the former federal fisheries minister Jonathan Wilkinson. We've met several times on this matter. Nonetheless, in our disappointment with the federal response on the bycatch issue, we are taking habitat protection measures seriously and been conducting work jointly with the federal government on that measure.
Member for Saanich North and the Islands on a supplemental.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to the Minister for the response. Not only has this government's Steelhead Action Plan been widely cited as a conservation failure, it's also been marred by allegations of political interference in the scientific process to favour commercial interests. Many complaints are coming directly from the provincial public servants. If that wasn't bad enough, DFO is now refusing to release the recovery potential assessment altogether. The assessment was co-authored by this government, the federal government, and independent scientists, and the public has a right to see it. Instead, to get basic information about how steelhead are being managed, they're forced to file FOIs. DFO's response to those Freedom of Information requests, it will take 822 years to organize the information for us. Through you, Honourable Speaker, my question is again to the Minister of Forest, Lands, Natural Resource Operations.
Members.
That was actually really quite funny. Through you, Honourable Speaker, my question is to the Minister of Forest, Lands, Natural Resource Operations and Rural Development. Last year, in question period, the Minister said the previous government, quote, did nothing to represent BC interests with DFO when it comes to steelhead, end quote. From where I'm standing, things are looking pretty similar. At very least, can the Minister please tell me if his government has a scientific integrity policy for its public service?
Minister of Forests, Lands, Natural Resources and Rural Development.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. And yes, it's well documented that we were disappointed with the report that came out that didn't accurately reflect the original scientific knowledge that provincial biologists, federal biologists, and an independent biologist put in place. However, we are working with the federal government. We contributed $42 million towards the Salmon Restoration Initiative Fund. That funding has allowed us to work on, for instance, habitat restoration in the Bonaparte River that was needed after the Elephant Hill fire and has increased steelhead habitat for that steelhead run. I also want to highlight, and we haven't had the opportunity to talk about this even just briefly in the legislature, the just tremendous efforts between the province and the federal government on the Big Bar slide this past summer. And this slide not only threatened salmon runs, but also threatened the Chilcotin steelhead run blocking fish passage. With the tremendous efforts that was put into that, the natural passageway was restored when the river levels dropped, and the steelhead were able to make their way to the spawning ground. So we'll keep working with Canada, First Nations, and other stakeholders on our action plan because we know the value of steelhead as a species to ecological integrity and also to the people of the interior. Thank you, Honourable Speaker.